So officially welcome everyone. Good evening to all. My name is Hemant Sood. I'm the chairman for the Triple ID Delhi chapter, and I welcome you all to 2020. This is the 21st webinar of the IID Design Webinar Series, Our Vision for the Future. These webinars have been organized by us since May and will go on till October or beyond, depends on COVID, on a range of design related topics, a very wide range where some of the leading architects and designers from India and even across the world have come and given their insights and their views on different topics. This webinar series is brought to you by 8 chapters of Triple ID, and my special thanks goes out to my 7 fellow chairpersons, Siddharth Naik at Goa, Anshuman Sharma at Jaipur, Leena Nimbalkar at Mumbai, Ashima Vashisht at Chandigarh, Vishal Mashruwala at Surat, Mohammad Nisar at Mangalore, and Geeta Karthikeyan at Coimbatore. So as you can make out, it's literally spreading across the country. Special thanks also to our head office for their support, Jabin Zakarias, IIID President, Jignesh Modi, IIID Honorary Secretary and Mentor of the Delhi Chapter, and Tanuja BK, IIID President-elect. I will first start by introducing our moderator for the evening and my friend, Madhu Kumar. After graduating from the School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi in 1985, Ravi, are you running a PPT?
No, Hemant, next time.
Oh, okay. So after graduating from SPA Delhi in 1985, Madhu honed her architectural and interior design skills at various prestigious firms like Kanvinder Rai and Chaudhary, Stein Doshi Bhalla, Sunita Kohli Interior Designs, Intercontinental Technocrats, and Prem Chaudhary and Associates. She then co-founded Mandeville Designs Inc., an award-winning architectural and interior design firm which has executed and designed 800 projects under their belt in the last few years in 20 cities in India and 3 cities abroad. Madhu also teaches, and she's taught extensively at SPA Delhi, Vastukala Academy, and the Sushant School of Architecture, also in Delhi. Her interest and passion has always been in interior design, and she has also designed a wide range of furniture for her projects. She's been an active member of IIID Delhi since its inception in 2004, and was also on the managing committee a few years ago. I remember when I was the secretary, Madhu was the joint secretary with me. So Madhu, we'd love to have you back very soon.
Hopefully, yes.
And I now request Madhu to introduce our 4 wonderful panelists for the evening. So over to you, Madhu.
Thank you so much, Hemant. I would begin. I would like to introduce Anupriya Sahu. Anupriya is an architect with a master's degree from the School of Planning and Architecture, Delhi. She has a strong belief that designs should combine aesthetics, ergonomics, strength, and relevance. She has a keen interest in detail, which manifests clearly in her designs. Anupriya heads a firm, Alankaram, which manufactures solid wood furniture. Alankaram was started in October 2015, a small setup covering 7,000 square feet of area. Today, it is 200,000 square feet, a unit near Indore. Anupriya's work stands out because it is contemporary, minimalistic, and there is an elegant usage of joinery. They specialize in handmade solid furniture items of Indianness. The designs are inspired by our culture, yet they are modern and contemporary. Use of different woods and different colors in a single piece has been a feature of their work. Welcome to our webinar, Anupriya, and we look forward to your valued views. So I would now like to move on to welcome Vrinda Mathur. Early age proclivity towards the arts led Vrinda to pursue her undergraduate degree in the design at the National Institute of Fashion Technology, New Delhi, with a specialization in lifestyle accessories. Post her graduation and a short stint in luxury lighting with Swarovski, she volunteered to lend a helping hand at her parents' humble furniture manufacturing setup. This setup sowed a seed for her future endeavors as a design entrepreneur with the launch of Studio Wood, a boutique furniture and space design agency which she co-founded with her friends and fellow design enthusiasts Sahaj Bhatia and Navya Agarwal in 2014. The collective is best known for its in-the-moment aesthetic and ingenious quirks. Bestowed with the title of India's Best Young Design Studio, the firm not only received recognition nationally, but at an international platform too, such as Wanted Design New York and Salon Satellite Milan, to name a few. With a mixed bag of expertise, Brinda likes to explore multidisciplinary projects that blur the boundaries between architecture, art, craft, and design. Welcome, Brinda. I will now go on to introduce our next panelist, Gitanjali Kasliwal. Gitanjali is the co-founder and managing director at Antaya and AKFD. Gitanjali is an architect from TVB School of Habitat Studies, New Delhi, and she post-graduated in management from ISB. She co-founded Mahi Roj, world's first festival-centered sustainable practices for the earth. Gitanjali has brought her design sensibility and a modern approach to the craft sector in India. Gitanjali works with skilled artisans and comes up with fine modern Indian designs. Nominated among the 100 most influential design firms in the Indian subcontinent by Architectural Digest, they were awarded the Lexus Design Award and SIDBI India Best Employment Generating MSE Award, Pool Best Furniture Design Studio of India, Lifestyle Award by Messi Frankfurt, amongst others. I think the main prime project is the Mudra installation at the Delhi airport, which I think is really marvelous. The Punjab Grill restaurant in Washington, DC, furniture for Titan headquarters in Bangalore, and Narendra Bhavan Hotel in Bikaner, etc. Some of their prestigious clients globally are the Conran Shop, Anthropology William Sonama, and Crate and Barrel, and many well-known architects and Bollywood personalities within India. WGSN Europe's trend-setting agency named them as one of the 10 must-visit secret shopping places in the world. Press coverage includes the New York Times, Financial Times, Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, etc. Gitanjali, we look forward to your interaction today. And now our last panelist, Anjali Modi. Anjali has a great passion for design, which blossomed under the incomparable guidance of interior guru Pinaki Patel and the late Sri Dashrath Patel. After earning her degree in industrial design from RISD, she honed her skills in Providence and New York before Mumbai. Over the past 10 years, she has co-founded the acclaimed creative agency Sakarma, as well as a bespoke design practice Josmo in late 2010. Josmo focuses on bringing good design within reach to a large Indian audience. A 6,000 square feet retail store and 30,000 square feet factory are the recent feathers in her hat, making her overall dream of good design within reach a reality. After 10 years of professional success, including glowing features in Elle Decor, Architectural Digest, and Good Homes, she expanded her practice to Goa, where she now resides. Anjali has established a philosophy centered on blending necessity with imagination and is transforming the arena of design in India by adopting best practices, environmentally sound manufacturing, and expression through design. Welcome, Anjali, to our discussions, and we look forward to your views.
Thank you.
So now we will begin our discussion. Today we are here to talk about the future of furniture. There are some core points that I hope to cover, and I'm hoping that this webinar, each of us can learn the vision of each one of you. Let me start by asking the first question to all of you. And the question is, the subject of our discussion today is rebranding furniture design in the global context. That is a mix of global and local. That is why we are calling it Glocal. What, according to you, are the good global features in furniture design which we can bring to the local furniture industry and vice versa? So someone would like to take it up from here?
I can
Yes,
go.
Vrinda? Yeah.
Okay, so I've had little exposure with design in general outside of India. In 2018, when I visited Salone Satellite as part of the Milan Furniture Fair, it was a complete eye-opener. All the designers there were, of 30 years of age. That's basically the premise for the show. And I think one thing I definitely picked up was that they were absolutely fearless. When you look at any piece of furniture, the way it was done, whether it was the materiality, whether it was the form, the colors, and the function equally, they were all very well balanced and very disruptive. Just looking at it and just, if it was a chair, it was so interestingly created that I was like, okay, maybe this is what I need to see and learn myself. So I think just the sense of being fearless, maybe sometimes we miss that because we're often focusing on the client and maybe cutting back on our creative energy. So maybe a little bit of that. I would definitely want to incorporate that in my practice.
Manu, I would add to that, really well put, Vrinda. I would also add, there's a 360-degree complete excellence in design. There's an approach of design that probably we might need to adapt. And also like how you scale up the furniture production. Because we're all like dealing with beautiful artisanal product line, which is very sustainable. But how do you make it, how do you make it consistent with the quality design, and how do you scale up the productions? You have a great mix of craft and scale. I think that is a big challenge also. Also, thirdly, in terms of value, how do you make sure that people trust you at the face value? Anything which we do, which is related to an export client, one thing they come back to you again and again for is that they take your word and you make it happen. I think integrity and honesty to your work and value, exhibiting the value that it's child labor free, we're not exploiting. There's so many fair trade practices, sustainability. That is very key to having a very global outlook, more so in the future. Yeah. And also one more thing, I think timelessness is extremely important, even though it's not like a global feature, but I think we have to look at things which are timeless in the current context. Thanks.
To add to that, I think what I've realized and what I admire about the West is that from day one, there is a very organized message. And I think having clarity of thought with your business and your brand from day one is extremely important. For us, and the way our team also thinks is, we always present ourselves as if we were speaking to the world. Even though we are based in India and our context and our network is based in India, the way we present ourselves, the narrative that we have, the focus that we have on detail, marketing, everything is keeping in mind, if we were to implant ourselves in a Milan, would we be able to, put ourselves up against the big Turks? So I think having that high benchmark at all times and always striving to work towards that is something that we find personally very, very fulfilling. Another thing is that everyone here on this panel at some point or the other has had the ability to, have the benefit of being exposed to what the West has to offer. A lot of my team members, for example, haven't had that privilege. And so it's very important to have people expose themselves to that. Take the time out to expose our teams. What we do with our skilled artisans is, while they're rooted in traditional craft, we teach them about new age technology and the future of machinery and, AI tech very, very seriously. And it expands everyone's mind, and then you're kind of working towards a global objective. So I think that's been really, really helpful. And lastly, presenting ourselves as owners is one thing, but I strongly believe that every single person in the team is an extension of your brand. And we're very careful about what we say, what we do, what we put out. The internet is a vast machine that keeps eating, and once it's out there, it's really out there. So it's very important to be on point at all times, to make sure that, again, going back to my first point of having that clarity of messaging kind of just resonates through your entire journey of your brand.
I agree with you, Anjali. Having traveled extensively myself, I think, people like us, Indians, like put in an international scenario, we can really hold our own. There's nothing that we lack just by being Indian. In fact, I many times feel that we can tell them a thing or two. So I think India has really progressed that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Anupriya, what are your views? You're muted. Anupriya, please unmute.
I had some of the foreign clients. They were from embassy, and they we have many clients actually from embassy, and they really like the furniture and they took with them. So the thing which is required in our furniture, what I've noticed from our design, is like neat lines and minimalistic approach. And sometimes they're very they're thrilled with our colorfulness. They really like our craft. Sometimes we use hand woven material. So we are really good with all these things. But the main problem occur when it comes to multifunctional furniture, when it comes to good hardwares, which we are not able to provide. And also, like, we are good with the joineries, of course, we are good with the structure, they like everything. But all these things we are lacking with. We have really limited approach to good hardwares, I think. Because once you will make the wooden furniture knock down, then it is easy to transport. Otherwise, it will be very difficult. But everyone is working in wooden furniture, we knows we cannot make it knock down furniture. So we keep on getting good inquiries from outside India, but sending one or two furniture become really problematic. So that's one of the things.
Yeah,
I
have another aspect to that, like globally, everyone is downsizing. And also for that, if furniture is CKD knocked down, it's more utilitarian. And also modular furniture, if the same piece of furniture can double up for 1 or 2 or 3 activities. So I think that is what the global market is looking for today.
So at this juncture, I would request Rishu to run a poll, and let's hear our audience's views on this.
Ravi, before that, just a minute, I just wanted to interject. I had a question. Okay. And I wanted a clarification. What happens is we give a lot of jargons, and our own webinar today has got a word "glocal" in it. And sometimes what happens is when we talk in marketing language, we tend to lose the real intention behind it. So I wanted to ask one thing. We've heard a lot of stuff of late. We've heard vocal for local. We've heard made in India. We've heard Atmanirbhar, which is self-reliance, which means we rely on ourselves and don't rely on reliance. My whole question comes down to, what do we mean by the word glocal when it comes to furniture? Do we mean that we make in India and then sell abroad? Do we want foreign designers, foreign companies to come in India and manufacture here? Do we want them to incorporate Indian designs, Indian crafts into their furniture? What is it? I mean, what is the exact meaning and definition of the word glocal? I am unaware, and I'm sure a lot of our audience is unaware too. So if any of the 4 or 5 panelists here who are all doing great work in furniture can tell us, what exactly does the word glocal mean to furniture?
Hemant, to me, glocal means, as Anantya and EKFD, how we perceive it, and it's kind of stood the test of time. And that to me is one of the key things for being glocal, that it is contextual, and yet it's you can put it in any place and it'll do its job very well. It'll stand the test of time, context, yet you will have a rootedness to it. You will have a narrative to it, why it's coming, from where it's coming, which is very much part of the design process. And your local materials, your local But yet, if it can conquer the challenges of logistics, multifunctionality, places in time, and design, which is loved by mostly everybody, then, or even like when it ages well, that to me is local.
Okay, but I'd still like to, again, still cut the clutter further. I just want to ask, and already the questions have started coming in. Joy Singh has asked the same question I want to ask. How do Indian designers brand their furniture? That's what I wanted to know. Do Indian designers design, go abroad, and that's called local? Do foreign designers come and manufacture in India and with Indian craft? Is that local? What exactly is the process of going local? You've given me the philosophy behind it. I totally agree with that.
Can I go?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I think for me, local is, I mean, there's a very simple definition that you may be manufacturing in wherever, whichever part of the country, but you're creating something that appeals to a global audience. That's what local is. Whether I'm sitting in India and manufacturing and selling in Italy or in the United States, or vice versa, whether somebody in Mexico is selling to India. It's about where you are and the fact that what you're building with your local materials, with your expertise, is appealing to everybody around the world. I think that's the simplest way of putting local for me.
Anyone wants to add to that?
Yeah, for me, it's like locally made and to help local economy also. Like you will make it locally and sell it abroad also to help stopping import also. So I think helping local economy is also one of the things.
And help competing with imports. So I've got already a question here that says, is there any scope in competing with IKEA? So that's okay. Already people are thinking on those lines. Anyone else wants to take that on?
Our philosophy actually for quite a while has been similar. We like to think of ourselves as global in mind and Indian at heart. And I think that's really what Glocal is. You know, you have a global relevance, which means, like Vrinda said, it's accepted no matter where you hail from, but it resonates with a global narrative of what design really is. But you're harnessing what is local. You know, you are amplifying what is available to you that no one else in you know, the world has. And a lot of those things are very specific to India. So if you can find that balance by still kind of casting a wider net of what your design eventually intends, but comes from a place of Indianness and craft and skill and detail, which really no one else has, that balancing act is Glocal.
Okay, wonderful. And then I think now it's the time we run that poll. So Rishu, can you run poll 1 for us, please? So that's a surprise for you there. We're running a poll. Let's see what the audience thinks. The panelists can vote too. So
Rishu, shall I run it?
whoever is the host can run it.
We can both run it.
Okay, please, somebody runs it.
Okay, so our poll says, what is better for the future of furniture design? Go global, go global, go local, that is global and local, or stay local? We'll give it about 30-35 seconds before I share results. So Hemant, it seems the term local is well understood by our audience.
Yes, I was just trying to get a little more clarity on that. And I think the panelists have also explained it very well.
Yeah.
Can we see the results?
Yeah, in fact, I loved Anjali's explanation of what she thought local was. And our audience agrees with you. 88% says that the future of furniture design is in going local.
And nobody is going, not a single person is going global. So that is the end of Chinese furniture for you.
Because of the pandemic, I guess. So now can I go on to the next question? I would like to ask Anupriya this question. You have got a master's degree in architecture. So how does your knowledge of architecture help you in furniture design, Anupriya?
Yeah, actually many people ask this question to me. how come from architecture and urban design to furniture design. In my very first project, I have designed a bookshelf called Kitaplik, and I got comments saying that it's really proportionate and it's geometrically correct. Now I connect the dots and see why I got these kind of comment, why my design is having balance and good proportion and geometry. That is because of my architectural training. During my architecture, I had a design problem that was like design a chair by corrugative sheet. So I did well in that, and I designed a corrugative chair which was very strong, and also I've used at my home for years. So that was the very first instinct which maybe later on influenced me to go for furniture design. Also, when I was learning in architecture, I learned about scale and proportion. So when now I have projects, I can think of like from gross level to very small minute details for my projects. Also, most of the clients are architects, so I can have better understanding what they want, and in a way I can read their mind, so it really goes well. In architecture also I have learned about space making. So like making furniture layouts and all is really easy for me. In urban design, I learned about rationalism. So when I'm designing, I'm keeping in mind I'm using local materials. I'm not wasting materials. I'm making process simpler so it can the resources can be optimized. Also, like whether it is building design or city intervention or a furniture design, I love designing. Okay. So it's about designing. So I really don't get bored of it. So that's the main thing.
Right. So
Anupriya, I had a question here. I was just wanting something. For example, I'm not an architect.
Okay.
So can I become a good furniture designer?
You can, but the thing is that when I did architecture training, I start my thinking became broad, even in urban design. So like even designing a small thing, first I think it in a bigger picture. So it's helpful. Also, like I've seen examples.
Practically speaking, how much does that help?
I don't say that only architects can become good furniture designer, but the architects can. Like architecture education can help you a lot while doing any kind of design, any discipline. You can go to any design discipline.
Oh, see, we had this discussion before. In fact, the last webinar itself was with the architect Habib Khan, who's the chairman of the Council of Architecture. And we had this very open argument with him and a discussion with him. Architecture is a field. You guys study architecture, right? In architecture, yeah. Interior design is a very small subset. Of interior design, furniture design is an equally minuscule subset. How do you think that being an architect helps you being an interior designer? I'm not an architect. I think I could make a good furniture designer. And I don't know the others. Is anyone an architect here? The other people except Madhu? Architect. So two people here.
Anjali is also architect.
Yeah, she raised her hand, so I saw that. So okay, so there are two people who are not architects. Are you both interior designers, qualified, or not even that?
Unqualified. Not even that. Wow. Okay. No, I studied product design. So
okay. So product design. Product design probably has some. I'm saying not even that, because right now in the hierarchy, furniture design is somewhere way low. In fact, interior design also disappears when it comes in front of architecture. So I have that issue. I've always had that issue, and I want to bring it up again. Is do you need to be an architect to be a furniture designer? That was my.
No, I'm just saying that my education helped me a lot to being in furniture designing. Okay, so I'll keep in that way. When we were making a factory, okay, that's like a large scale thing. So when I was setting up my factory, being an architect, it became very simple for me. Like otherwise I have to have external help for that. So I designed my shed, I designed all the layout, machine layout, I designed all the air piping layout. So that helped me. I'm saying that, okay?
No, that,
Even in
I'm sorry, that's not selling.
no.
It's like saying I'm a chef, so I make food at home, and
The
the
thing
food keeps
is,
me
No,
happy,
no,
and I can
I'm
be an
just
interior
saying
designer.
how it helped me. And also like when I was doing my first product, I was thinking, okay, how to go about it. It is very difficult to do for me. But I was like, okay, my studies taught me how to put your ideas into life. So it helped me in many ways.
Okay,
Also, I'm not saying,
Anupriya, let's say
the
we
people
agree
who
to
are,
disagree. I'm not sold on that. Gitanjali, you're an architect. Do you have any comments on that? How much has architecture actually helped you in furniture design?
Architecture informs you. Any discipline of study to me is not, it's not the end. It's a learning. And what you have in you is what gets produced. Myself and my husband, we make an excellent team because we get both of each of best of each other. He is a he's a genius at his furniture design from NID, Ayush. And I've studied architecture. And it really is a great combination because I can sense the space overall and what the needs of the architects would be. Whereas Ayush can figure out details like anything. So from macro, it somehow informs us both. And we both are like consultants to each other. It helps.
Okay, Gitanjali and Hemant, I'd like to put this question to the other architect on the screen before I run a poll and hear the audience views. So what does Madhu think about this? She's a qualified architect, but she's always, loved interior design, and she loves doing interior design. She does not like doing architecture so much. Madhu.
But I agree with Anupriya and Gitanjali also that it's my background of architecture which helps me to execute my interior design projects with ease. And I seem to have the knowledge and, that education, I feel it really helps, whatever education you have. And absolutely what Gitanjali says, it's the same space. We're working in the same space. And what Anupriya says, we can understand interiors much better since we have the background of the architectural education. That's what I feel.
I have a feeling that the audience will disagree with the
One
architect.
sec, I want to get into more people. Anjali is an interior designer. Vrinda is a product designer.
I'm not an interior designer.
Well, never mind. Even better. And you're still a great furniture designer.
You know, the thing is that for me, every learning is a learning. And I'm actually in awe of architects because it's a very grueling profession. There's a lot of pressure. There are a lot of details to take care of. And every time I think of an architect, I think of a macro view. And if you can think macro, then thinking micro is just that much easier, because when you're thinking macro, you have to think of every single detail and the bigger strokes. And, people that can kind of zoom in and zoom out, like Anupriya and Gitanjali. I mean, that's a skill that very few can balance, and like everyone is saying, they inform each other, they balance each other, they always support each other. And, when you get stuck on a minor detail, the bigger picture zoom out kind of helps you get out of it, and vice versa. So they're kind of two sides of the same coin when it comes to a skill set. And I mean, I think if you're a designer, you can pretty much design anything. I mean, that's my philosophy. You throw a challenge at a designer and they'll use everything they've learned as skill sets over the years and they'll figure it out. Because for me, designers are problem solvers. You can be an architect or an interior designer or a product designer. These days, these labels fly around also very loosely, So it really doesn't matter. I think if you can be a creative problem solver, you figured it out.
Okay, Vrinda, what about you? Your comments on this?
I would just add a little bit more. I don't know about design education, but for sure, every architect on the panel who's hearing this would agree that, architecture teaches you one thing, is that rigor. If you can get past those 5 years with those sleepless nights and getting those things on submissions on time and getting it shot down, know, it teaches you much more than just, it's just a way of life also.
Gitanjali, I am an architect. I've been in the profession now for over 40 years. I can't even design a side table, honestly. So let's, Hemant, I think we should hear what the audience has to say
Yes,
about
let's see what the audience has to say about this.
May I go before the audience?
Yes,
for
please
this
do.
debate?
Please do. Please do.
Yes. Okay. So in fact, at Studio Wood, I've studied product. I have two other partners, Navya, who's an interior design enthusiast, and Sahaj, who's an architect. And the three of us work very seamlessly across the board now. We have Sahaj, who's also designing furniture. I am also contributing to interior design projects. Navya is contributing to installation. So it really is about being that creative person, like Anjali said. And you learn along the way, you learn from each other. And I think it's about that collaboration and not really about that competition that I have to be an architect or I have to be a furniture designer. As long as you're being able to get the job done and do it well.
you know something, this is such a hot
Anupriya
topic.
wants to respond. You've pointed
Yeah,
out something.
yeah.
We will not
First
finish
of
our
all,
webinar if we don't go over to the next question.
Yeah, we have to go to the next question.
See, one controversial question and see where it leads you.
And the
Okay,
next,
let's have the poll, please. We need
yeah.
a poll before that.
So the poll 2 is, can you see the poll, everybody?
Yeah, we can.
Does being an architect or an interior designer help in the furniture design? Option 1 is it's mandatory. Is it somewhat helpful, or it makes no difference at all?
One thing I'm very happy, the audience is all worked up. So I'm getting lots of comments on the chat.
No, I totally agree with you here, Hemant.
Which means I've done my job well. I'm the disruptor here after all. I'm playing the devil's advocate, guys. I don't necessarily believe in what I say.
So the audience is being very diplomatic. They said it's somewhat helpful.
I love the 24% that says makes no difference at all. That's my tune.
I'm with that. I'm with that 24%.
On that note, I think
Madhu, next question, all yours.
Okay, so the next question is to you, Gitanjali. How would you, how do sustainable and green values bring life into furniture? Sustainable and green values, how do they bring life into furniture?
So,
and before you answer that, Gitanjali, we have a poll after that too.
Okay.
To see if the audience agrees with you.
Sustainability is like probably the most talked about word today, and it can be interpreted in many ways. So I'm only giving my point of view from where we stand. And I do think that it really is how many more people can you engage? Who are you? Who are you? What is your goal? Is it people? Is it material or profit? So if you can engage a lot many more people with conscious values, as in keeping your environment, keeping the least possible wastage in mind, let's say being frugal in a way, or maybe being essential. If you are able to do that in all aspects, then you are in your way, you're sustainable. It is it's not like a hard cut to rule this is sustainable or that is not, even though we have carbon values and all that is happening, but just basic things like ethical business practices, or how you would, like for example, our business make sure that people are at the center of it, whether we have clients or whether we have our artisans. Wastages, we are using up all our wastages, repurposed products, repurposing craft rather, not letting the culture, just traditions and culture, keeping them alive. And it's all linked to people, livelihoods. And that carries on the message. Sustainability brings life because it's all about emotionally durable design. To me, durability is very, very key to sustainability. So for example, somebody had written the question that IKEA furniture, IKEA is a great model in terms of design and functionality, but what we can offer as Indians is like the natural materials, well-oiled finishes rather than the melamine or the PU, because that is really what creates less of pollution, less of, and it ages well. You can sit and rub your furniture and it'll be perfect, for years. So you can pass it on from generation to generation. You are spending less resources making it. So all those aspects, I think add to
Yeah, I
sustainability.
think that's very interesting. Well-oiled furniture. It's the first time I'm hearing that, but it's really so sensible. Very nice. Uh, Actually, I can just go to the next question to Vrinda after this because it seems to be interlinked. Like Vrinda has talked about relove, which I understand is about creating and recreating from old furniture. So, Vrinda, can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, sure. So that's actually how Studio Wood came into being. This is also 6 years ago. What we as a collective tried to explore was the potential of pre-loved furniture. Pre-loved meaning furniture you may have had for years in the house, or sample pieces, scrap materials. That was our bag of raw material that we picked. And we turned around those pieces into completely new forms and completely new functions. So I'm not talking about reloving by just taking an old chair and repainting it or giving it new fabric. I'm talking about deconstructing it completely in its form. So we did lights with chair legs. We did seats out of drawers. We did a study table out of an old shelf, and so on and so forth. And it does add to making a more sustainable choice. Even now, whenever somebody approaches us for an interior project, a lot of times they tell us they have old furniture they don't want to part with, and that's when this entire relove project comes into being. So yeah, I think that's one thing that we are always interested in doing at the studio. And it's really also fascinating to see when you look at that old piece of furniture and when you kind of completely turn it around and what the potential is. As a creative, as a designer, it really is a fulfilling process. So yeah.
That's really very interesting. And I'm sure there's going to be a great cross section of people who really appreciate, if you can restore their pre-loved furniture, because I know people are very, very emotionally attached many times to many pieces of furniture. That's really great. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, so Anjali, I want to ask you.
I'm dying to run another poll. Can I please do that?
Okay.
This is on sustainability in furniture. Give me half a minute.
Ravi, we saw the poll for a second and it disappeared. Yeah, that's
okay.
It's
Coming back.
Yeah.
Keeping cost and choice of material in mind, is it possible to have sustainable furniture? First option is it's not possible to have totally sustainable furniture. It's possible, but at a substantially higher price. And the third option is definitely possible. So one person who says it's not possible, I guess, is just one person. Are the panelists voting?
Yes.
Okay.
So majority, Hemant, 80% are saying that it's definitely
First time
possible.
I've seen a poll which has got over 100%.
How does that?
Am I smoking something, or is everyone on the same same substance that I'm having? So the first time I've seen a poll, 79 is a 40. Ye kya ho raha hai? Okay, our poll has also lost it. So this is called webinar fatigue. Our package is also given up कि हमने इतना webinar plan नहीं किए थे.
Okay, so
yeah, Anupriya, you're on mute. You wanted to say something.
Yeah, I have a question from Vrinda. Can you show your relove to IKEA furniture? Can you make something out of IKEA furniture?
I'm sure I can.
But I really want to
I'd
mention
love to see
it's
what you
really.
have and we can turn it around.
Yeah, but they are using material which are really not durable. Also, like I think for making project out of material which we reusing, it should be durable.
I think
Isn't
the
it?
only way to compete with an IKEA is to provide a good quality product at the same price.
That's what.
At a good price.
At a good price. Same price is not going to
You
be
know how,
possible.
it's funny, but how you can improve the price? If the demand increases for good quality furniture, your price will automatically come down.
That's
Natural. So it's all about how our audience picks up and chooses that furniture, which is better, well done, you know,
yeah.
once, and picking up 5 pieces of furniture which they will throw away in 3 years.
That's what.
Well, two things are there. One is, of course, it's a great opportunity.
And which is local and not made in different parts of the world, and getting shipment costs and transportation costs, and add to that everything. It's all about how much emissions we are doing overall, how much impact is going on. So therefore, local definitely makes sense for a domestic audience.
But one thing is there. One is that you're in a great opportunity right now with the Chinese furniture getting banned, and I'm sure people are going to cut down on that very drastically. So hopefully that will change the idea of good quality Indian furniture with the public, that is with the buying public. But I have a great comment that's come in from Joy, who wants to ask, why durable? You're talking about durable furniture. She says, why durable? I want to change my furniture every 5 years. It's not marriage, it's a furniture.
Well, you can provide.
I don't know, sorry. Joy, I'm sorry. I don't know whether it's a male or a female, but I'm sorry I said
Then,
it
It's
could
a
be
great
wrong.
question, because
Incidentally, Hemant, Joy is in Vancouver, so this question is coming long distance.
Oh, wonderful. I just wanted to question, is Joy a male or a female, because I used the word she by mistake.
I think both. She's both. She wears the pants.
She is.
Okay.
We will not go into that.
I will not go any further into that. That is a topic for another webinar.
I've been talking about durability. May I answer this one from my side,
Yes, please.
or attempt? Like, I think, Joy, how, for example, our furniture sometimes is multifunctional. It can be converted into a bench or a shelf or so that is also part of your design, how well you design it. One of the pieces which comes to mind is called Ina Mina Dikka, and you keep on lifting one piece of it, and suddenly it starts becoming something else, then something else, then something. In fact, most of our furniture is actually almost like performance and art genre. So you can have fun with it, you can be creative with it, you can put it in 20 different contexts and not get bored with it. Try it out.
Correct. I think that's a very good idea.
So we should try that concept with marriage also, because
Yes, you can.
Yes, Hemant, you can with your.
yes, remove one thing at a time and see what new comes out. Okay, Madhu, back to you.
So can I go on to my next question? It's for you, Anjali. Yesterday when we were talking, you had mentioned that you had made some near fatal mistakes and you learned a lot from them. So in the context of design of furniture and the furniture industry, would you like to share your learning with us, please?
I think all my mistakes now, after reflecting on them, were all personal. I think a first big mistake that I made now, looking back, 10 years into the entire journey, is that when I started, I had absolutely no plan. I was a very young designer. I was too ambitious for my own age, and I wanted to hit the ground running before I even knew how to walk. And what price I had to pay is that, an organized businesswoman would have had a business plan, a strategy, maybe a trajectory of what she wanted to do for, at least the next 3 years. And I kind of put that all on the back burner and became a doer, and, put planning on the back burner. And I feel like the kind of effort and what I had to kind of compensate because of that mistake cost me a lot of time, cost me a lot of good people, and I wouldn't advise that to anyone. Another big thing that I learned, over the past few years actually, is that for a very long time, and maybe this is just my personality, I was pretty much a one-man show. I thought I could do everything myself. I was an accountant, business development, creative director, HR manager, and obviously a business owner has to wear those hats all the time. But looking back, what I feel I could have done is that, I failed at creating a vision for the small team that I had. And now it's one of the things that I focus on the most. I chart a course, I share dreams, I involve other people in that vision. And my goal now would be to make my role redundant in the organization. Tomorrow, if I disappear for whatever reason, the organization should be able to manage and sustain itself. So I didn't pay attention to that internally. A third one that, kind of hits home pretty hard is that, for the longest time, I had this perception of what a boss needed to be in the eyes of their employees. And being my mother's daughter, I have this very tough exterior, and I felt like there had to be a line drawn between you and your people, and at no given point must you share your vulnerabilities, your fears. And now looking back, I realized that the biggest thing that I've changed within the culture of the organization is that I share my stress. I'm open, I'm engaged, I'm very honest with my team. And I feel like now I feel that everyone's along, on the same ride with me, and it doesn't feel as lonely as it felt earlier, and I think there's a lot of merit in that. A lot of people, from speaking to them, are still kind of playing this balancing act of, what role you have to play as a boss in the organization. And I've kind of thrown all of that out the window, and I'm just being myself now, which I think has been very fruitful for us. And lastly, this constant struggle of juggling between designer and businesswoman. As a designer, you have a completely different objective in the organization. You have to be able to think freely and thrive in a stress-free environment to be able to let your creative juices flow. And as a businesswoman, no matter what stage the business is in, you're constantly problem solving and, fighting battles, and it's a high stress environment. And it kind of kills creativity to a certain extent. And, for the last, I would say 5 years, or let's say the first 5 years, I paid very little attention to being a designer, and I spent a lot of time being a businesswoman. And it really came at the cost of creative fatigue. And it's only now that I'm beginning to find the balance between prioritizing what's important and what no one can do in the organization except me, and spending all that time that I have had delegating, handing it off to people that I trust. I'm now bringing back those kind of creative aspects of, what I'm really good at into the business. So these are just a few learnings. I could literally write a book on the learning.
I know.
Over 10 years, but
Right.
it really comes from a personal space, right? Because, you are your business. And for a lot of us on this panel, we spend a lot of time on our work. And most of our days spent in growing this dream, right? And there's a very human aspect to it that no one really talks about. And I feel like over the last couple of years, I've tried to kind of bring that back into, who I am as a boss.
Right. And like this kind of, runs into my next question is that, for the first time, we have an all women panel, and we are all designers and businesswomen, and we have family responsibilities too. So I think individually, what do we feel about this? Your near fatal learning and being a businesswoman and a designer, it's all kind of going together. So would anyone else like to say something about this? Basically, being a businesswoman and a designer, what is the challenge that you face day to day?
So many challenges. Our journey, like my journey particularly, has been completely on a tangential, just taken tangential things because of my personal life, or how our business panned out, because of our priorities in life. So I think for each one of us, it's about balancing our priorities and creating an opportunity out of that. So when my children were born, Ananya and Tanaya, when the second one, up until then, I would be part of all the projects with my husband. But after that, I said, I don't think I can go out on sites and be, not be with my girls. So that's how Anantya opened up in my basement. And now every time something or the other happened, it just gave another opportunity to take it creatively. But it's a huge challenge. That said, being a woman and being able to meet expectations and being able to do or delegate things is has been a huge challenge for me. I've never been a time management person, so I've really learned along all of this.
Right, great.
Gitanjali, this is a question which a lot of panelists, a lot of attendees, especially women attendees, are asking. And I am amazed at some of the great interior designers we have, like Sunita Kohli and all. I don't know how they manage their family and business and profession and everything. So would Vrinda or Anupriya have anything to say on this, or Anjali? Anjali, you are muted.
Yeah,
Yeah, Vrinda, you go
If you wanna
first.
go, I can go after
Yeah.
you.
Okay, I'll go. Yeah. So yeah, it has been. I mean, I don't have kids of my own right now, but I have been doing this for a couple of years now. And when I started out, I was fresh out of college, very young, and I'm also very like petite. If you look at me, so people often wouldn't take me seriously because I was just starting out, and this young designer is now taking up projects and doing things. So I've kind of felt that design is still not democratized as a practice. For special, I mean, like for as a woman designer, I could say that, and I work with most of my team, my carpenters, polishers, upholsterers are mostly all men. Even at a site, at an interior site, I'm working with contractors, things like that. So at a lot of times, I've been kind of the only woman in the building, and it's been sort of it's been a mixed bag. Sometimes it's gone well for me. Sometimes I've had to hear things that I didn't want to, and I do till date. I have unfortunately undergone some experiences where I have been questioned because I am a young designer and a female designer. So there have been instances like that, and I think it's time that we all kind of grew up and understood that it does not mean that I need to be of a certain gender to be good at what I do. So I think that's just something which needs to be inculcated in the general fabric of our country.
Absolutely, Vrinda.
Vrinda,
Thank
I wanted to check one thing. The discrimination that you faced, was it because you were young or because you were a lady or both?
I wouldn't want to, I don't know, but I feel it has to be both. It has to do with both. I've actually, I mean, also, yeah, sometimes it's, you see it like, why don't I have women carpenters? Why are they all men? Why don't women get into carpentry? Those are questions we still need to answer. So I think that's something we're learning to deal with every day.
Anjali, you had something to say, and then Anupriya after that. You're muted, Anjali.
I was actually going to stress on, that balancing act, right? Your initial question of balancing work and family. So I live in Goa. My entire family lives in Bombay, and what I've found is that there's so much time going into work. There's very little time to actually connect, and there's small ways in which I feel I've become closer to the family, or given context to my journey and my struggle without communicating regularly. And I mean, one of the few things is involving family and small wins, whether it's a press article, or whether it's an interview, or whether it's a tiny award, or a breakthrough at the factory. My family has been extremely supportive during this really testing time in COVID. We had 70 people in the factory, and it's been a real struggle, managing emotions. I'll just leave it at that. But like I said before, right, sharing vulnerability, sharing fears with family and peers has really just been one of the things that's been my strongest support system throughout my career and over the last 4 months as well. It's been shocking how the community has just come together. I'm shameless, and I've always been shameless, and I'll ask maybe 30 people before I take a decision, because I like to come from a place of being informed. And it's just been astounding how the interior designer community, the architect community, fellow product designers have really just shared their stories, their opinions, their versions of just how to maneuver through this and other challenges that they faced. And I don't know, I find that we don't really tap into our network as much as we should. Yes, there are events and gatherings and kind of social opportunities to connect. But what about when you're going through the real struggle? That's when you really need your peers. And like I said, I'm shameless. And I know a few other shameless people that just go out and reach out for help whenever needed. But, I'd really love to see more of that dialogue. Why only connect when you're struggling with something? Why not connect when you've had a success and you'd like to share that? So much you can learn from people doing right and wrong. And I'd just really love to encourage that dialogue being opened up, and just see where that goes.
That's nice. I like what you said. You consult 30 people before you do what you want to do, what you need to do.
Actually,
amazing. That's so interesting.
And Anjali,
Very lucky.
in a way, in every city, that's what Triple ID is for, to reach out to your peers and connect with them. So that's in a way what we do. And now in COVID, we're doing it through webinars.
Okay, now since you have said COVID, at the risk of being repetitive.
No, I think
we have a poll, audience poll.
Ravi's got his polls ready here. So.
Okay.
Let's see what the audience thinks about women in the industry.
Yeah, there's a lot of chat happening on that.
So the question is,
as controversial as it comes,
in your personal opinion, do women make better designers?
Not relevant.
Not relevant.
Not relevant at all.
Not relevant.
We're not saying that. We're not trying to say that.
Designers here, yeah.
Please don't influence the audience. You can vote here. I would go with the first option. Yes.
I would actually also feel that.
But that's very unfair to men,
It is unfair to men.
Very good.
No, there is certain issues that I would feel women are definitely better at, and some that men are better at, and they're equal, but they're different.
Yeah. So a huge majority, 72% say that it's not relevant. But what is interesting is
26% say yes. Yeah. So there is some people who agree with us.
And again, there's one person who's saying no. I want to know who this one person is.
That's all right. Everybody is entitled to their own opinion.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I will go to the last question of the evening at the risk of being repetitive. I would like to know your views about furniture design.
Sorry, I think Anu wants to say something.
Okay, yes, please. You have to unmute yourself, Anupriya. Unmute yourself.
Yeah. I want to say one thing, like if you want to be a working woman and you want to be attached to your family, just involve your family into your work. So you will be doing both. And second thing I want to say, we are having around 20% women in our factory. And out of I think 6 women are carpenters now. We are training them.
Vrinda, that's for you.
That's really good to know.
Yeah.
Very good. Really good to know.
And also, I'd like to add that this year, beginning of this year, when we created our new factory with our new premises and everything, we both made a pledge that this new place will be having 50% women by 2025. We're going to have that as well, yes.
See, you people are furniture designers and furniture manufacturers, so you're talking about factories. I'm an interior designer. Office is just filled with women. That's all that. So I don't even understand where you're talking about. I am probably the only man in my office. Me and the peon, and we have equivalent importance in the office.
Very lucky. Very lucky. Okay, so we'll go to the last question of the evening. Is that it's open to everyone that post-COVID, I mean, what are your views on how furniture design would change in the post-COVID scenario, with especially with respect to materials? Are we going to change the materials because, you know, for obvious reasons? Would you like to say something about that? Yes, Anupriya?
Yeah, like I have seen when we are using a lot of sanitization on our wooden furniture, it gets stained. So we are coming up with these solutions so that when you sanitize frequently, it will not be stained. We are using upholstery, which is bacteria free. So these kind of things we are adopting now. So it's like in our furniture, we are getting more hygiene.
Good.
Can I add to that?
Yes, please.
So it's been interesting kind of observing how the market will turn, right? No one really has an answer, but it's obvious that living is going to become insular. But I think apart from that obvious, note, I think there's going to be an attitude of gratitude and really embracing what India has to offer. And I see that now. And all these campaigns of supporting local businesses and really truly adopting what India has to offer. I mean, I'm very curious to see how authentically that unfolds. I hope it's not a trend. I hope it's not something that's fashionable right now. I think it's extremely important, and I hope it's genuine. At least the effort that I see right now is extremely genuine. And I feel that, with this entire kind of balancing act, I keep saying that, but I genuinely feel like I'm balancing things all the time. But, people are really going to cherish space more, and they're going to do whatever they can with it. I think there's going to be adopting a less is more philosophy only because of cramped spaces and obvious, the economy and how much it's been hit. But I truly feel that on a kind of psychological level, people learn to become a little more independent. And by that, I mean growing your own food, taking care of your own home, managing your own expectations, managing work and family. And again, this is a very important time to really see whether a shift can stay. And it's obviously going to be a positive shift. Simplifying life is always a good step. But like I said, it's important to see how authentic it is.
Okay, so that's very relevant. Would anyone else like to add to that?
Anjali pretty much said, I think, everything. And we do hope that, it's been a great break, the COVID, for everybody. It's been a blessing in disguise, if I may be allowed to say that, for a month or two at least, when we were completely looking inwards.
Yes, that's right. Looking inwards and getting a lot of answers looking inwards.
And then we did realize, all of us, that we don't need so much, do we?
Yeah.
It's just like, I think I've emptied half of my wardrobes, half of my things out of the house, given it away to people who needed it. It just taught us so much. And I just hope this stays. You don't need to, go out and flaunt. And I hope it stays.
True.
Taste.
Yes.
No?
I totally agree with you.
Essentials, we realized what is essential. Something nice that you hold precious and dear to your heart. And you started taking life not so granted. Tomorrow I may not live. So let me enjoy this piece or my space beautifully. Like, just do up your space. If it was not done properly, you would want to do it because you're living every day for everybody and yourself in the family. It just taught us to connect. And I hope it stays.
Definitely.
This service for all of us right now is really finding innovative ways of retaining and growing our teams.
Absolutely.
It's such a big
Responsibility.
Yeah.
And I feel the weight of that every day. I'm fortunate enough to be comfortable in my life, but not everyone in my team is, and I'm constantly thinking round the clock of what I need to do, what I need to innovate, what the market needs now that can really just increase jobs. Maybe not for me, for someone else. I'm very open about sharing ideas. So if I can't execute an idea, maybe someone else can. People can get their jobs back, and it's a sticking point, right? Because you have to do what you have to do, but you also need to do certain things, and yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, even now in this era, when we learned like doing things by our own, my maid's like she came 4 times and she's keep on asking, "Can I come back? Can I come back?" So for the labor class, for the people, it is difficult. Like many people are losing their jobs. We are getting earlier we used to get some 5 people coming for interview every day. Now we are getting 10 people because many people got jobless during this. So there are things which are getting difficult for people who don't have facilities like us.
Gitanjali, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to add, so poignant all of this, and then people always are first. You're always, in spite of all the financial things, which webinars which we was attended saying, lay off the people, do this, do that. We have held on to our guns and said, no, the 200 people are going to stick with us. We are going to work for our artisans on ground. And during that 1.5, 2 months, we have managed to put together with so many amazing people in the craft sector for our artisans, these movements which everybody contributed to, pro bono. And it really meant so much. And I just hope that people do realize that it's a reality, that on the ground, people need the sustenance. In the arts and crafts need the support right now. It's not as if everything will be hunky-dory and good right after this. There are livelihoods at stake. There are cultures which are at the brink of just vanishing away. People might... So, and all of this has very less carbon footprint. And if we can support our own beautiful cultures, the variety that we have, and not a monotony of the same thing stamped over the whole world. That is only us, India, and very few countries, other few countries left. I hope we do, we all of us realize that we do need to look at that beyond COVID, not just now.
Great, that's a wonderful thought.
And
That's
very
really
well
wonderful.
said, Gitanjali. Hemant, there are a lot of audience questions. Would you like to take? You're muted, Hemant.
Hemant,
Yeah, I'd like to ask a couple of quick questions before we close, and this is something from the younger generation. You are all the women here are entrepreneurs. They're running their own establishments. So there are 2 questions that are coming. One is somebody wanted to know whether you guys are bootstrapped and self-funded, or did you have to get external funding and raise capital from somewhere?
Completely self-funded, and started with a little bit of money from the pool of the 3 co-founders, and then just kind of built it up.
Anjali?
Self-funded, unfortunately.
Gitanjali?
There's no shame in having investor money. It's really the time that that right time when you want to scale up. I would think having an investor that is strategic is the biggest gift that you can give your business. So just an added pressure, but it's a smart decision when you do decide to take that leap.
So we began with 0. Ayush was already working with things, and we just grew from one to the next on our own about 19 years back, 20 years, 2 decades. We've grown by our own self without understanding any business plans, anything. We both are from professional field. We had the biggest support of our family. My mother-in-law, who is a mathematician, so basic nuts and bolts and intuitions and organizational skills that we all had put together.
Even for me and my husband, we had some amount of money, but it exhausted in initial days only, because when you start something, there's so many things come. But as Anjali said, she has a supportive family. Even I have a supportive family. My father is a government employee and he used to get salary. So sometimes we like have to wait for him, and like we have to borrow from him all the time. Like, okay, when father's salary will come and we'll run the company. So initially it was really difficult for us to sustain. Although we had, I'm not saying there was no investment, we had money, but it all exhausted at a time. Till the time we had around 100 products in our SQ, that time we then started getting back. And even now in COVID era, like maintaining our staff and labor is difficult because we don't want to throw anyone out. So it is a difficult time, and when you run a bigger venture, it becomes more difficult.
And now we're running out of time. So the very, very last question, one message for aspiring furniture and interior designers, please.
From each one of you, please.
Hmm.
Linda, would you like to start?
Yeah, that's a difficult one, but I think find your voice and stand your ground, and everything else will follow.
Anjali?
I think you are nothing without your team.
Fabulous. Gitanjali?
People. Yeah.
Gitanjali?
Have a vision, take along everyone with you because those blessings count.
Great. Anupriya?
I will say follow your heart, fearlessness, and take care of your team.
Hemant, you've not just been an interior designer, and I'm sure you've designed a lot of furniture too. What is your message to interior designers, to furniture designers? Sorry.
It's all teamwork. It's all, whether it's furniture design or interior design or even architecture, which I'm not, or Triple ID today, or a webinar that we're doing, or anything else we do or plan or think. It's a team effort. No one person can do anything alone. It is your team. For somebody, the team is family. For somebody, the team is people who work with you, your staff. It's teamwork. And that's what's going to take you to the next level.
Absolutely.
And I would
Thanks
like
for
to thank you guys, because it's really voluntary and you guys are doing really great job. IID people. Thank you so much.
I'm going to pose this question, the last question to Madhu.
Oh, Gitanjali wants to say something.
Okay,
Sorry, I
Gitanjali.
just have to add this one thing to everybody. Be conscious of your decisions now more than ever. You need that in future.
Fabulous. Madhu, one line from you before Hemant goes for the vote of thanks.
About furniture, I would like to give a more technical answer, like marry ergonomics with aesthetics, because furniture is very, very personal. If you have to use it, you have to like it ergonomically. And aesthetics is something which appeals to everybody. So I would like to say that we have to keep the two in mind and very closely.
So Hemant, my new name is ergonomic since I'm not aesthetic at all.
Well, thank you to all our 4 speakers. I'm taking out time and coming on this webinar, and especially Gitanjali with your throat. Your voice is sounding just great now.
And your floods in Jaipur?
It's subsided, but we don't know if tomorrow.
So thank you, Anjali, Anupriya, Gitanjali, and Vrinda.
Bye.
Thank you so much for having
Thank
me.
you all of you. Thank you, Madhu, for moderating this panel, Ravi for co-hosting, and my backup team, which is never visible. I keep talking about teams. Rishu, Vipul, Jagdish, and Conrad for behind the scenes management. And thank you, everyone. My other team, the 8 chapters of Triple ID, Delhi, Goa, Jaipur, Mumbai, Chandigarh, Surat, Mangalore, and Coimbatore. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, the audience, for coming up in large numbers for our 21st webinar. We're going to do many more. So keep watching 2020, the IID Design webinar series. Thank you so much. Pleasure having you on board.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bringing us all together.
Thank you, Rishu.
Great learning and holding us together, all of the moderators, 3 of you. And Triple.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Take care.
Bye. Good night.